Super Rugby Power Rankings for round 10, folks. I'm still on the floor, but I am coming home next week on Tuesday. Back on Wednesday, leaving on Tuesday. So, probably the last power rankings you'll see from the floor, thankfully. But I did manage to see all the games at the weekend, barring the Reds up against the Force. I managed to see every other game, so it's been a full-on week for me. Pretty pleased with that. I also managed to see Leinster and Toulouse in the Champions Cup, if you're curious, but I'll be doing that one tomorrow. So, after the other semi-final. We'll start with the power rankings, man, because there were some interesting results. And it's amazing how many of the teams have got pretty similar records, but one team who's got an exceptional record in that they are still winless is Moana Pacifica. I think a fair few people were tipping them to win their game against the Rebels. Not I. I figured the Rebels, despite my curse of wearing their jersey on my holiday, I thought they would still get the job done. Sure enough, it was a 43-33 loss. The cards obviously didn't help. They mounted a decent comeback at the end where they threatened to maybe get it done, but then they didn't. So, I mean, Almoa's still a proper unit, but winless record is still a winless record, sadly for them. 11th is the other Pacific team. I've got the Drua down into 11th after that home loss against the Blues. Now, the Drua have been a different beast in Fiji, but a 30-14 loss against a pretty good Blues side is still a bit disappointing. I think they would have liked a bit better than that one. So their record is 3-6 after these 10 rounds, and it's remarkable how many teams have got that same record, but for the Drua, sadly, they haven't picked up a win for a wee while. 10th is the Force. Down after bouncing up with a win over the Highlanders, they are back down with their away loss to the Reds. Like I said, that's the only game I didn't see. Looks like Zach Kibarigi got a double, but 31-17 is a bit of a deflating one, I guess, after a pretty, hard fought, what was probably my favorite game of the week last week. They followed up with a kind of disappointing away loss, but if any of you guys saw the game, do give us some insights. But their record is also 3-6. Another team on 3-6 is the team that they beat the week before, the Highlanders. The Highlanders go their Aussie tour and drop both games. Like, the Highlanders were looking kind of resurgent after a kind of disappointing start. They would have looked at this tour of Australia with the Waratahs and the Force as two potential wins to really put themselves in the contention. I mean, obviously, they're probably going to make the playoffs because everybody makes the playoffs. But, disappointing. 21-20. I mean, Aaron Smith, I think, did his best to kind of drive the team forward. But they surrendered the lead right at the end to lose at 21-20. So they will be ultimately, like I mentioned, pretty disappointed. 3-6 is their record. Even the Rebels have got a 3-6 record, and the Rebels managed to get a win after looking pretty bloody disappointing. The Rebels are kind of bounced up. There's so many teams within a whisker of each other, but the Rebels are one of them. 43-33. They were looking like they were going to put Moana Pacifica to the sword for a while during that game, right? Like, they were in bonus point territory. They'll be a little bit gutted that they surrendered that. I mean, they had a card of their own towards the end, which put them under a bit of pressure. But Kobus Elof is is a proper unit. Carter Gordon, in all seriousness, is like really looking the business at 10. But 3-6 for them. They're in a kind of club of teams who've got that same record, which also includes the Waratahs. The Waratahs have got a couple of wins now, 3-6. They beat the Highlanders 21-20 as in Parise. Still looks like he's an absolute unit, which is really pleasing. But I mean, Vailanu's try on, 79 minutes? Yeah, that's the stuff that gives the kind of crowd the justification for spending their hard-earned money to go watch a good game. In terms of drama, spectacle, that's a heck of a result, and much needed for the Waratahs, because the Waratahs for much of the season have kind of looked there or thereabouts. And I'm not saying beating the Highlanders at home by 1 point is putting them up with the top teams, but I mean, it's kind of a good reward for them after they've had a few disappointing ones. The Reds, believe it or not, I was a little bit down on the Reds last week, saying maybe they didn't deserve their spot where they were on the log, but I got them 6th. They are actually 4-5. They are one win better than pretty much all these teams below them, and significantly better than Moana Pacifica. So 31-17 is a relatively convincing win over the Force, man, at home. As I said, it's the only game I didn't see. It looks like Fraser McCright got a double in that one, though, but yeah, kind of much needed in Brad's final season with the Reds. They need to get kind of back into some form to put themselves in the conversation with the other teams, because I still think between here and the rest there is a gap, because the Reds 4-5 is a negative record. The next worst, if you want to call it that, team, or the next record in the kind of order of things, is 6-3. So it's a pretty big difference between these teams and the kind of, I would say, genuine contenders. But of those genuine contenders, I got the Brumbies in 5th, which is on my old whiteboard, the kind of top of the second row, with their loss to the Hurricanes. Now that was a really interesting game, because in terms there was a couple of table toppers this week. That was a really interesting one, a good test for the Brumbies for where they're at. They fell just short, 37-27. Now that late penalty makes it look a little bit closer than it was. They didn't really have a chance to win the game at the death, but they did manage to get themselves a bonus point, which is still pretty decent. Nick Frost with that bloody galloping try was something else. But yeah, I still feel like the Hurricanes looked like they were going to win that one. But yeah, the Brumbies were certainly not out of it. At certain points of it, they were still chasing. But yeah, 5th spot for them. Crusaders, now don't feel too bad, because on my old whiteboard this is still bottom of the top row. It's a visually deceptive one at the moment, but Crusaders in 4th. They lost to the Chiefs. The Chiefs are unbeaten, and that was a good chance to do what they did last year, to kind of flip things on its head after losing in Christchurch to go get a win in Hamilton, but they didn't get it done. Probably one of the better atmospheres of the week, you'd have to say. Really good crowd down there in Hamilton, very vocal despite a bit of kind of rough weather. But yeah, 34-24, they couldn't quite get it done, and the Chiefs have really just put a marker down, haven't they? 3rd spot goes to my Blues for that away win over Drua. Potential banana skin, certainly. Like in Fiji and Drua have looked like a different beast, but the Blues actually showed a bit of class to get that done, 30 points to 14. So kind of they're relatively convincing. So the Blues didn't do a Blues on me by slipping up on that one. 2nd spot has to be the Canes, with their kind of, as I mentioned, table-topping win over the Brumbies. Not quite the table-topping game the Chiefs and Crusaders was, but, you know, battle of the contenders. They managed to get a much-needed win. I mean, Roygaard just continues to impress, doesn't he? But that's a good win for the Canes, but still, there's only one, and it's the Chiefs. The Chiefs are 9-0. The next best teams have 7-2 in the Hurricanes and the Brumbies, and then there's a few other teams on 6-3. But man, the Chiefs. D-Mac, classy operator. Sean Stevenson, Brody Retallick in the forward pack. Jeez, there's some good players in that Chiefs side, and they're playing some good rugby. They were put under pressure for certain periods of that game, but ultimately they got it pretty well done. So there you go, folks. Power rankings from the floor for the last time until next week when I'm back home. But yeah, you guys let us know your thoughts. How would you rank the teams? And yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.